In this video, we're talking about 7 mistakes that might be ruining your floor monitor mixes, and if you fix a couple of them, I think you're going to be a lot happier at your next gig. So let's get into it. Oh, ringing out the floor monitors. You gotta do it. But it's okay not to ring out these guys' floor monitors, right? They're sitting. They're not going anywhere. That mic's not gonna move. You'd be surprised how many people tell me this. They tell me I can just leave my EQ flat, that I don't have to carve out any frequencies. Wrong. Not ringing out the monitor is short-sighted, and you're not really thinking ahead if you do it. Here's what I mean. Now, what artist doesn't ask for more of their vocals in their monitor? If you don't ring it out, you'll reach a point of feedback really quick. And what if the artist is hard of hearing? They'll want a lot of vocals in the mix, and if you don't ring it out, guess what? You're gonna get feedback. Also, I've seen some people do some wild shit with the microphone, so there's no reason to think that it's gonna stay on the stand all night. That's crazy. And if you ring out the monitor, people can point it directly at it, and not a lot will happen. We have no clue what's going to happen after the downbeat, or after the keynote speaker starts to talk, so why not plan for the unexpected and ring out the monitors? If you really want to try to have a flat monitor during the show, with no EQ, do yourself and the client a favor and ring it out, and then disable the EQ afterwards. That way at least you have the option to turn it on if something goes south during the show. It's a backup plan, and you're going to be glad you did it. This is a monitor return channel with way too much taken out of it. And when your EQ cuts are that deep, most of that frequency is taken out of the mix, which means that the artist can't hear it anymore, which is a problem. Look, it's a double-edged sword because doing too much EQ work on your monitor can do just as much harm as leaving it flat. But these EQ cuts aren't only affecting the vocal, they're killing every other instrument you have sent to the monitor mix. Acoustic guitar, electric guitar, fiddle, whatever it is. They're all going through the EQ on your mix bus, which sends you into this horrible cycle. You have feedback in the monitor, so you EQ the offending frequencies completely out. Now the artist can't hear themselves, and they ask for more in their mix, which in turn makes their monitor feedback all over again. But there's good news. You don't need to pull out as much as you think to keep the monitor from ringing. I usually don't take out more than 5 dB when I'm ringing out my monitors. It's enough to get a good amount of gain before feedback. It won't eliminate the frequencies from the mix completely, and the artist will still be able to hear themselves from the floor monitor, so it's just a win. Pickup patterns are how the microphone hears from different angles, and the rejection angle is the angle at which it rejects the sound at. And microphones can have different pickup patterns and therefore different rejection angles. And it's important to know them because we place our floor monitors according to off-axis rejection angles of the vocal microphones. For example, an SM58 has a cardioid pickup pattern and a rejection angle of 180 degrees, which means that it picks up the least amount of signal from the back of the capsule. So we place the monitor directly behind an SM58. Now a Shure Beta 58 is a super cardioid mic and has a rejection angle of 120 degrees, which means that it picks up the least amount of signal from the side of its capsule, so we would want to place the monitor to the side of a microphone like this. It's one of the easiest things to get good at because all you have to do is memorize the pickup pattern and rejection angle, but if you don't know about it at all, you're gonna be really confused when your super cardioid mic feeds back and the cardioid one doesn't. Here's the graphic EQ. It's got all these fixed EQ points you can turn down to eliminate problem frequencies, but you don't have to use it. Now what you might find on the internet is that the graphic EQ is the only way to ring out floor monitors. Don't get me wrong, it works and all, but I find it not to be as precise and easy to use as the parametric EQ. This is my opinion. This is a parametric EQ. It's got about 5 EQ points to move wherever you're having trouble. All the points have an adjustable bandwidth, so you can make your cuts as narrow or as wide as you like, unlike the graphic EQ. And you're going to be able to easily use these on just about every digital mixer out there. Another thing about the GEQ is that it takes up effects rack slots on my X32. And maybe I'd like to use those slots for an LA2A, 1176, or anything else cool that the mixer has to offer, not just a graphic EQ. I don't want y'all to leave this video thinking the GEQ is bad. I just want to say I don't think it's the only solution to ringing out floor monitors. That's it. I don't use them, but at the end of the day, you gotta find what works best for you. That's all you can really do. Sometimes we end up sending too much to the monitor mix, and all of a sudden we can't really hear anything coming out of the monitor. It's just too loud. Now, it's a lot like trying to stuff a 20-liter backpack with 25 liters worth of stuff. It's just not going to work very well. And this is when the less is more rule really comes into play. But the good news is that the monitor mix isn't supposed to sound like a polished record. It's so the artist can hear themselves and can hear whatever instrument they like to cue off of. So don't feel like you really have to stuff everything into the monitor mix. That's going to cause more problems than it's going to solve. Bad gain staging will ruin a monitor mix so quick, and if you're having issues getting a floor monitor to behave, gain staging is the first place I'd look to see if there's a problem. But if your gain is set too high, you'll have to keep the fader so low on your monitor send that any move you make is going to result in a huge change to the mix. And that's because the fader resolution is crap down there. If we zoom in on the fader, we can see that the difference between the numbers are huge towards the bottom of the fader, and that means that small movements up and down make big changes. But if your source is properly gain staged, then your fader should be able to stay in about the -10 to +5 range, which is fine. You can be much more relaxed with your movements up there, and big movements aren't going to change the mix as dramatically as they would down low. It's easy to fix because all you really got to do on most sources is make sure that the average signal level is around 18 dB, and your console is going to behave in a way that's easy to control. This whole time I've been telling you to ring out your monitor bus, and that'll totally work. But if you've got some empty channels on your console, there's a better way to do this whole thing. So we have these empty channels at the end of the console, and I want to use them to duplicate my vocal channels on so that I can leave my monitor mix bus EQ flat. We'll go into routing and make channels 15 and 16 duplicates of channels 1 and 2 by making them the same input configuration. Now we'll name them Vox 1 and Vox 2, and then give them the inverted color of their counterpoints to make them easier to identify. We'll need to take them out of the left and right mix. These won't go through front of house. Now I'll go to my monitor mix bus EQ where I've already rung out my floor monitors. I'll copy those settings and then paste them across channels 15 and 16. Now these channels are rung out and we can disable the EQ on the mix bus because these are the channels I'll send to the monitor for the artist mix. And what you're going to find is how much better the artist is going to be able to hear and to cue off of other instruments in their mix, more than they were before, like their keys or an acoustic guitar, and they might even ask for less of it in the monitor because large chunks of information aren't missing from the mix anymore. It can make your stage less loud, and that means you can hear what's coming out of your front of house. It's just a win overall for everybody.